Hi, welcome to PAX Online, and I'm your moderator, Tanya DePass. Today we're going to revisit a fun topic called queer quests, bi battles, and terrific transformations. And we get to do it virtually this time, which is a little weird. I get to hang out with people I like and friends and talk about being queer and the games that got us there. So, for the only time ever, I'm going to read something to an audience. And that way you know kind of what you're in for, and then we will dig into it with everyone introducing themselves. So today's panel is about both video and tabletop games that offer us thousands of experiences. You know, we want to know if you've ever explored an entire virtual world just because you could. Have you ever played as a different gender or sexuality? Because games not only offer us a glimpse into fantastical universes, but they allow us to experiment with our own identities. This can be especially influential and meaningful for LGBTQIA+ folks. Join GaymerX and friends in a retrospective of queer quests, sapphic stories, bi battles, and terrific transformations that helped us discover who we are. And to share those stories, the panelists are going to introduce themselves, and I will go last. So we're going to start with Amanda. Who are you? What do you do?
Hi, I'm Amanda Stevens. My pronouns are she, her, and I have spent the last 6 years working both in gaming and in esports. I wear a lot of different hats, both as a content creator, a host, a pundit, and most recently I've switched into the diversity and inclusion consulting part of esports. You may know me from the Trans Lifeline tournament that I did back in June, where we raised $10,200 for Trans Lifeline. And when I'm not doing that, I'm playing an unhealthy amount of Magic the Gathering and Final Fantasy XIV.
All right, Chris.
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Chris. I'm an on-camera host and also a content producer. I am known for being on BuzzFeed, Nerdist, Funimation, Freeform TV. I also was recently on Saving Throw, which I was super proud of. I host and produce the Not Safe for Weaves podcast with Emma Fife about shipping. And I also recently became a writer for fandom. I'm very proud of that
Awesome.
too.
And Sharang, who are you? Because I know who you are, but many more people should know who you are.
So I'm Sharang Biswas. I'm a game designer, writer, and artist. I'm mainly freelance, so I do a lot of freelance game design work, either on my own, like show and galleries and things, or freelance work for clients, various clients, kinds of clients. I most recently co-edited Honey and Hot Wax, an anthology of erotic art games, which it just released like 3 weeks ago from Pelgrane Press, so do check that out. And I'm the co-editor of the upcoming Strange Lusts, Strange Loves, an anthology of erotic interactive fiction, which is going to be published through Strange Horizons magazine next year. It's going to be super exciting. We're kickstarting in fall, so check that out.
And I'm your moderator, Tanya DePass. If you've seen I Need Diverse Games Anywhere, that was me being literally mad about video games at 6 years ago. And in that time, I Need Diverse Games is its own entity, but also I stream on Twitch. I do a lot of writing. I used to do a lot of game review and writing. Now I do RPG development, editing, creating, working on the RPG based on N.K. Jemisin's series, starting with the 5th season, which that whole series won a Hugo for Best Novel 3 years in a row, which is a first. And, you know, I do a lot with GaymerX. I do a lot with OrcaCon. I do diversity inclusion as a job. And when I'm not doing that, I mean, when I am doing that, but I'm also like professionally queer, I guess. We all are, because it's part of what we do. But, you know, we didn't all start as professional queers. We are pros at this. So I want to talk about, you know, all of our own queer quests, battle transformations, because all of us, I think, have a game that helped us explore our queer identity, even if we didn't realize it at the time. Who wants to go first?
I can go first. I grew up in the United Arab Emirates, right? So I'm not Emirati, but I grew up in this like country which has like Muslim law, which means it is illegal to be gay, right? And I was also not very wealthy, so I didn't have a ton of video games. But I remember when I got, this is a random, strange story, but I remember when I got Neverwinter Nights, right? That's actually how I got into role-playing games, D&D, because I saw Neverwinter Nights. I'm like, wait, this seems to be based on another rule set. Like, what is going on? And, that was cool. But there was one moment in Neverwinter Nights that, like, middle school Sharang was like, ooh. Because at that time, I was like, I think I'm gay. I'm not sure. That's a terrible thing to be. Like, what is happening? And there's a bit in Neverwinter Nights, which is silly, where you enter this, like, brothel. And there are these like mini silly moments where you can like talk to one of the sex workers and then they say some like vaguely flirtatious things, and then screen cuts to black, and then you wake up and you're only wearing your underwear and you gain 1,000 experience or something, right? But there was a moment because one of the sex workers was a dude, and I remember being like, no one's watching me play this game. And I'm like, let me flirt with this male sex worker. And he was like flirty and whatever, and then cut to black. So like, it isn't anything explicit. It isn't anything descriptive at all. He just says something like, ooh, let me teach you things. And then you wake up and you gain experience. So you learn things. And that was actually that tiny moment that's not connected to the plot. That's not even very long. But that tiny moment really influenced me. I'm like, whoa. And I don't think it did anything specific, but this fact that, I just like hooked up with a dude in the game, that's so cool. And if I remember well, and I haven't, this is so long ago, I think I saved game right before it in a save slot so that I could do it again if necessary. I don't think I did do it again, but I think I remember saving it and being like, I wish to be able to do this again if needed. And that was a interesting moment for me.
Nice. Chris or Amanda?
So for me, as a trans person, I didn't really have a lot of game experiences that allowed me to explore my transness. Instead, I think it's when I started online gaming that sort of gave me an avenue to be more myself without having to like deal with people, because you can just type to people, right? Like, oh, hey, I'm a girl, and that's all you need to do, right? Unless there's a voice chat. So I think it's more like when I started playing games on Steam, when I got into college, even though I was already out as trans, that gave me more of a way to like feel like I could be a girl without having other people project anything onto me that I had to deal with in my everyday. Because like when I came out, I had all these different voices telling me what I had to do to be a girl and how I should present myself and how I should act and how I should do things. But it's like, all right, cool. Well, now I'm booting up playing Left 4 Dead or something, and it doesn't matter. I just can say if I want to or if not, and I just can feel like I'm being myself without having to deal with anybody sort of projecting anything onto me.
Awesome.
I started playing Final Fantasy X. I think that might have been one of my first video games. Yuna and Colette from Tales of Symphonia both helped me discover that I really like sparkly things as a gay person. I have a lot of thoughts. I really hope to write a piece eventually about how there is a type of unintentional queerness about JRPGs and the type of women that are depicted in them with this, also I really like magic. I always play mages in D&D. And I also feel like, I think the first time though that I actually got to experience, I'm playing a male character because I know that there is a gay romance option for me is Dragon Age. So, yeah.
Awesome.
I don't know if you know that game, Tanya.
I get that reference.
Never heard of it at all. What is this I can just speak of? And for me, it was, at least for analog games, it was D&D, because I could actually do what I want to do in a game. I could, as long as people weren't weird at the table, I could romance a character, or I could play a dude if I wanted. And because I'm not very femme, stereotypically femme, I don't do makeup very often, or at least not to the level that a lot of my friends did at the time, where we are at gym class at 8 a.m. Why do you have on a full so with tabletop games, it was definitely D&D, early games I played. There's a game called Underground that was very post-apocalyptic. I don't know if people remember it. It feels like I'm the only person that remembers this game. It was post-apocalyptic LA. And then for video games, there's not a lot until like the first Dragon Age, definitely the second and third ones. Because a lot of the games growing up for me were like very much you get to be straight white dude that saves like the skinny blonde white girl. That's it. It's like, I don't want the skinny blonde white girl. I want the short brown skinned girl that looks kind of like me because she's cute. So where's the game giving me that? We still don't really have those, just so you know, people watching this who make video games. But that's a whole other panel. And we all touched on this a little bit, but is there a game you want to kind of expand on briefly that really helped you cement who you are as a queer person?
I guess for me, in a sort of really roundabout way, and I guess this is just because I'm a trans person, there's not a whole lot of transness in games, right? Your way to experience being trans in a game is usually playing an MMO and just playing your gender, and making a character reflect you. But in a sort of roundabout way, magic. And this is just because that's where people got to know me, right? Like I used to be a semi-competitive Magic the Gathering player. I was a Magic judge that was very active in the Northeast in Canada. I wrote Magic articles. I ran a Magic website. I had a Magic podcast. And so that's where I got to, really feel more comfortable in my skin as Amanda, because I like talking. I like people paying attention to me. Any of you who've ever seen me in the diversity lounge at a PAX knows that I like being the center of attention. I can't help it. But so getting to be a personality to an extent really helped me become more comfortable and battle hardened, because when you become a personality, you get to deal more with everybody's opinions, right? And so it really helps harden you to like really be comfortable with who you are, because you're going to spend a lot of time with people judging who you are. And so if I hadn't become a content creator, which started with me doing a lot of Magic content and becoming, a semi-professional player, I don't think I would have been able to develop the same sort of wherewithal and sort of in comfortableness I have with my transness that I do today.
Like many gay men, especially many gay men of color in Manhattan, I often have like body image issues and like, am I attractive? I don't look like the skinny white Twinkie guys in Chelsea, right? That happens a lot, right? And so LARP has actually been a great way to combat that. Suzanne Vedemo has a really great article on NordicLARP.org where she talks about playing to lift, right? Where in LARP, the purpose is we are affirming each other's belief, right? I think Marcus Pijola calls this inter-immersion, or is it Michael Pijola? Yeah. So this has been really interesting, because I remember when I went to a New World Magiscola for the first time, and that is a 360 LARP, so that's like a full 3-4 day long LARP where we are staying in a college pretending that it is Magic University, right? It's like loosely themed on like the Magic School fictions, many of those that exist. And the first time I went, I had tickets from someone else because they couldn't go, and they're like, Sharang, I have the extra ticket. Do you want a ticket? Just pay me half price for ticket. And I'm like, oh, great. So I didn't work with the character designers to make a character. I was assigned one, and the character I was given was, you are very flirty and attractive, and people like flirting with you and chatting with you, and you like hitting on folks a lot, whatever, was one of my main character traits. And I'm like, okay. And it was really interesting because in the way Nordic LARPs work is you, most of the time at the start of the game, when you're chatting people, you tell people like, my character is very hot, and the other people are like, great, we're going to treat you that way. Or similarly, my character is very smart, so whenever I say anything in class, just assume it's correct, right? So people are telegraphed. People telegraph what they want to do and how they want to treat you. So I'm like, so my character is really cute and everyone's gonna flirt with him, and people are like, great. And so the whole game for 3 days, it was, whenever I talked to anyone, they'd be like, oh, hey. And I'd be like, oh, this is a nice feeling. And that was actually really, I mean, because, obviously we all know we're we're LARPing. So at one level, I'm like, this is people interacting with character, but at the same level, the bleed was real. So bleed is a term that Emily Careboss popularized where your real life emotions and your in-game emotions collide. But so like the bleed of like, oh wow, people think I'm attractive and cute and stuff was real, and it was actually very good for my self-confidence as a queer man who of color who has body image issues. I'm like, oh yeah, I can be attractive. I'm just saying. So and that's happened in multiple LARPs since then, and that's so I recommend everyone play attractive characters in LARP. You will feel better about yourself.
Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I guess besides Dragon Age, you know, because I when I said Dragon Age, I meant like the original Origins Dragon Age, but it progressively got better, and I definitely started seeing, oh, they're actually writing a character that I really identify with in Dorian in Dragon Age 3. Also, I was looking through some of the old games that I've played. I also think that Persona 4, but I know that it's not perfect, but I was appreciative that they explored sexuality and, you know, masculinity versus femininity in kanji. Also, I mean, Dream Daddy is a pretty easy one. Gone Home, I think. Yeah, Gone Home was pretty important. Like, for me, Gone Home, actually, I was able to, I think I played it like 5 or 6 times, and each of them was with a different person sitting next to me, which was really fun.
Sure, and I believe Amanda was raising her hand. You add on to that?
Yeah, so I'm so used to doing digital games, I keep forgetting about analog, but I forgot about LARPs. And something that Sharang had said is very true for me is that I used to do a LARP in the Northeast called Dystopia Rising, and getting to play a character, again, having that similar experience of, you know, you tell everybody your character is a cis female, and people will just treat you that way. And so bleed sometimes is talked about as like sort of a negative thing in the LARP community, about like sometimes not being able to like disassociate, you know, things that happen in game with the people and the people that do them to you with what happens in real life, right? Where I have more of a positive experience of bleed, where it's like, again, a nice experience to have a whole weekend where like people don't misgender you or like question anything about you or ask you weird things that, I mean, you get weird questions in LARP, but they usually have to do with zombies trying to kill you and not what are your genitals. And it's, you know what, like if you're gonna ask, like, it's like, zombie survival LARP and nobody cares about what's in between my legs. This is nice. I mean, sure, zombies want to nom on my head and there's these radioactive raiders, but like, you know what? I could live in this world. This seems like a great place to be.
It's Fallout, but without, you know, misgendering.
Yeah, it's great.
It's interesting because like we've talked about all these games, and you know, Chris already hit on Dragon Age, which for me, you know, and the Dragon Age series has spanned a lot of years now that we think about it. And the first game is by no means perfect. You know, when you go in a brothel, it's like, ooh, that's cringy. That's so cringy. But they fixed it. Actually, listen to the community. But the first Dragon Age, and also Mass Effect, because even though you couldn't be a male shep and romance a dude until the 3rd game, I could be a femme shep and romance a woman for all 3 games. You know, I could get my Blue Asari fix on if I wanted to. But that makes me think more about our next question, which is what's the game that we all found more engaging when viewed from a queer perspective, be that actual in-canon queer romance, a headcanon, etc. And I'm going to take moderator privilege and talk first for a change. Well, I don't, like, you know, moderation style is like, I'm here to facilitate.
Fake shock. It was fake shock.
I know, but it's like people watching that may not know, like, who is this rando being a weirdo? The microphone. But for me, playing Mafia 3 from a queer headcanon perspective, and then playing a DLC where the developers leaned into what the fans have been doing. So for those that have never played it, It's a very serious game. You're playing Lincoln Clay, who is returned from the Vietnam War. He's actually mixed, but everyone reads him and he presents as a big black dude that you see walking around in fake New Orleans. And one of his contacts, like one of his CIA buddies, oh God, I'm totally forgetting his name, but my friend and I call them murder husbands. Because they've got that. We've been through the thick and the thin. They've survived Vietnam together, and fandom ships them, including myself. And there's great fan art, there's everything else, and so the devs actually leaned into that really hard on a DLC of like, there's just like in any other context it'd be super flirty dialogue between them, and you could read between the lines because the jungles are lonely and they're two dudes being dudes, so we don't know what happened in the jungles of Vietnam or on the long flight home. Who knows? And I've always played that with that queer headcanon in mind of John and Lincoln being together, but it being very cognizant of they'd be a mixed couple in 1968 America. There's no way they'd be out, like everything's behind closed doors, to the point where I did write one fanfic and actually Googled when like certain lubricants were invented, so it was very
historically accurate fanfic, yay!
Historically accurate gay fanfic, yes. But that Mass Effect, I even though I'm not a fan of Caden, he is a romance option in 3. So yeah. But what is everyone else? What game have you found just to be super engaging when you either put on a queer filter that isn't there, or if there actually is queerness canonically in the title?
Well, I'm gonna give a quick cheat answer and then a better not cheat answer. Is that the quick cheat answer is that all tabletop role-playing games are better if you throw queerness into it, right? I really like the idea. I mean, when I GM games, I always, if I'm GMing a module that's published, I always make extra queer characters. Like I'm like, oh, these NPCs are now bonking, right? I have to be like, oh, PG-13, what words can I use? Like, for example, in Curse of Strahd, I'm like, great, some of the major NPCs you meet, they're bonking, right? And this becomes a plot point, blah, blah, blah. So that's the cheap answer, because everything. But the other answer, and I'm going to reference Dragon Age again, because I think I feel we are, the four of us are like close in generation in some way. For our generation, Dragon Age, I think, was one of the first major AAA, well-known fantasy RPG things that had a lot of queerness represented in it, right? So I resonate a lot when Chris talked about that, because I remember so I'd started playing it briefly at my friend's place. Like, oh, this is a fun game, I might get it. And then I did research. I'm like, wait a minute, you can be gay and have gay romance options? Oh my God, what? And then, of course, I fell for the jock himbo, because jock himbos always like, so I'm like, yeah, Alistair. And then I'm like, wait, you can't romance Alistair as a dude? What? And then I know what you're going to say, Chris. Then what happened is that I did research and found all these fan mods, right? And I actually,
Chris, keep...
Right? And I actually talked about this on another PAX panel about your favorite sex scenes in games, is that there are fan mods that let you romance Alistair. And I didn't install them because I'm kind of a purist when it comes to games. I never do fan mods. I have this weird like purity complex. Like, no, that's adulterating the designer's vision, and I'm a game designer. I can't do that, which is silly, but I'm silly. But I really appreciate that fan mod exists, because in addition to like, slaking the gay thirsts of those who want to, bang the jock himbo, I also think it's a symbol of like queer resilience and versatility, right? That regardless of anything, queer thirst will prevail. We are going to put this romance option in this game, damn it, and you can't stop us. And so that whole lens of like queer people exist and make the, like, we're here and we're queer, that whole angle is very potent, I feel, and very cool. And so Dragon Age is made better for that mod existing, even if you do not install that.
I actually have like been so my gears have been turning since I read this question, because I generally play a lot of esports titles and story doesn't really matter to a lot of them, right? Like there was a point in time where League of Legends lore mattered, and like there was the Journal of Justice and there was all of these events they would do in games so that you could feel like you cared about the story. And then Riot just said, no, the story's optional, right? Like we'll give you some pieces here and there. But a few years ago, Riot made a really interesting change to a character named Varus, where Varus, they invented a term. So Varus is from Ionia, which is supposed to have a lot of Asian themes to it. And they basically made the backstory for this character, which used to just be a guy and a demon in one body, to a guy, his somewhat dead boyfriend, and a demon all in one body. There's
a whole comic about it, right?
Yeah, there's a whole comic
story.
and a music video, and it's very cool. But for me, and the reason why this is really important is I date someone who's non-binary, right? Like my fiance is non-binary, and in the lore now for League of Legends, they have Ionians refer to their partners as heartlights, and it's a gender-neutral term. And so just having that sort of experience with a game that lore doesn't matter anymore, it doesn't affect anything, right? Like Varus being three dudes having an orgy in one body, like doesn't matter to how the character plays in the game, right? It's just there. But just anytime that Riot does things similar to that in their backstory, like into the lore, is just really important, I've found, for both myself and a lot of other queer people that play the game, because you know, it's this thing that you can think about now, right? Like before you don't have anything, right? Like all these lores are very surface level. But for me, I've really found that just like having that little bit of snippet, right? That little thing, the word heartlight, has really had such a strong impact in a way that I didn't think about until I started dating someone that's non-binary. Because like it gets kind of boring to say partner all the time. And a partner doesn't tell people, especially when you're trans, partner, people might think, oh, well, this person looks masculine to me, so partner, they're just talking about their boyfriend. Or partner, so you say you're a lesbian, so partner just means that you're dating a girl. So I'm gonna say Amanda's fiance, she goes to this school. And it's like, nope, that's not it. My partner's non-binary. These aren't their pronouns. Please stop assuming them. And so having the ability to use something like Heartlight, even though people don't know, not everybody plays League of Legends, not everybody knows this little weird snippet about Varus, it stops people from just immediately gendering my partner.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just, it sounds really, it's really, sometimes it feels really silly to talk about out loud, but like when I think about this question, it's like, well, this one piece of queer lore in a game where lore doesn't matter has had more impact on me than any game that actually has queer characters, that actually has trans characters, or, you know, anything I've ever done in a LARP or a tabletop, because it's giving me language to express my love for the person I'm engaged to.
That's so cool. And I was thinking while everybody was talking, and it's not one of our slated questions, but it made me think about derivative media and what fans will do in order to queer up settings, because there are a lot of times where there'll be queer characters, but it's not explicit, it's implied.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I want to throw this out there before we get to our last question is, you know, of us here and of people who may be watching this at home later, how important is it to either create that derivative media so that either your headcanon, what you'd love to see, or tease out more of something we may just see of a character we get one or two things about? Because what I've seen, at least in fan spaces, is, you know, the random character that you encounter once, it's a side quest, you never see this character again. People will write 20,000 word fanfics about this one random character, and there's their husband, if they're a dude, and, you know, how they were trying to just get bread and medicine. And I'm like, okay, I get it, but what is it about these either minor characters or even the main characters where the queerness is not explicit? And what's the value of either creating that for yourself or finding where other people have done it? Because Sharang was talking about mods, and I'm sitting there like, So this is why my game of Dragon Age doesn't run right anymore, because you're there, because I can't make mods. I don't have that technical skill, but someone out there did, and it's like, that means I can be Alistair and bang the dude warden if I want to. You know?
I mean, what I'm hearing is that I need to play Dragon Age.
And bang the dude warden, yes.
I think for me...
you'll be getting a Dropbox file after this recording.
You're a little outnumbered here.
I think for me, especially as a trans person and not getting a lot of real trans representation in games, I used to be like, mods or people making their own backstories for things. Oh, that's dumb. Like, just stick to what the game is. But as I've started talking to more queer and trans people, I've started to realize that like it's really important for people to be able to have that sort of inspiration, right? Even if they, you know, my new favorite thing is in comics is everybody's been talking about how Peter Parker is a trans man. And that's why this is a thing that started popping up in Civil War. A lot of people were saying on Tumblr that Peter Parker's a trans man because he's so adamant that he's not a boy, that he's Spider-Man. And people kind of read into that, and that's what they started to say is like, oh, yes, like he's a trans man. And I was like, I'm gonna let people have their fun. Like it gives them a character that they can relate to better. They see something that I don't see, but if that makes them feel more engaged with the media, then that's amazing, because as trans people, we don't get characters, right? Like, I remember getting really emotional. I mean, this is the game, but I got really emotional watching Sense8, right? Because for the first time, I saw a trans character that had a similar backstory to me, who was also a lesbian. And I was like, this is everything I need ever. I'm sated I'm sated in a way that I never thought I needed to be. And so I'm so happy for people when they play digital games that they're able to create these narratives for themselves off of maybe throwaway text that the developers didn't think would make people think a character is trans, but like the communities take it and they run with it. And I think that that's great.
So I want to make this point that I really like what Amanda said, and I stand by what I said about this mods and things. And I think it's very important for people to be able to add their own layers, perspectives, stories to the things. But at the same time, I don't want our audience who might be game designers and developers and writers to think like that's enough, right? I don't want you to think, oh, we don't need to include any queer stories in our games because people just added themselves. So we're going to be non-controversial and make everyone bland and assumed heteronormative, right? There's a great tweet Eric Mersman, who's a big LARPer, said a little while ago, which he's like, it's the 21st century, like understated subtext of queerness is no longer enough, right? And he was talking about Deadpool, where the creators flirt with this idea that, oh yeah, in the movies, he means, Deadpool is bisexual, because in the comics, I think he is canonically bisexual.
Yeah, he's very queer in the comics.
But in the movies, they just wink to that a bit slightly, right? And he's like, so the movies are trying to cater to the queer audience, like, look, he can be bisexual, we're never gonna say it, but he might be. That becomes like the Dumbledore effect, right? Mm-hmm. I mean that opens a whole can of worms of J.K. Rowling, but whatever. Ignore that I said that, maybe. But this whole idea of we're gonna just put subtext so that a queer audience can then take it if they want to, and an audience who is threatened by this won't take it. I don't think that's cool anymore, right? We're in the 21st century. It's high time that writers write about the rich experiences in humanity and put explicitly queer people in their stories. And then if fans want to do what Tanya was talking about, add more queerness through random side characters, give them like 7 husbands and a harem, great. I want 7 husbands and a harem. Sounds so fun. Also a lot of work. Anyway, but I want to make the point strongly that it is still important to put diversity explicitly into the games. This is not just queerness, even though our panel is about queerness, all kinds of diversity, but actually put queer people in there and don't just hint at it and don't just make them villains, right? I think it's very important. Sorry, I felt very strongly about that and had to speak before Chris. Sorry.
No, it's no problem. Yeah, I'm just gonna echo everything that you said. J.K. Rowling can go to hell. And yeah, I mean, I think it's very beautiful that we have developed this ability to be creative and to use original IP to create our own worlds and to make them our own. And I definitely think that it's a great mode to explore our desire, because that's also something that's very difficult for queer and trans people to explore oftentimes in a heteronormative world. But yeah, I definitely agree that the only reason why we have to do that is because of scarcity. So I think that's really important for people to keep in mind.
Yeah, and you know what? And a lot of people get really mad about it, because when Sharang was talking, I was thinking about the flip side of the mod conversation, because unfortunately there are people who made mods to erase Dorian and Sarah, them being strictly queer romances and making them bi, because it's like, oh, it's not fair that it's like, no, because we finally get a very explicit, no, Dorian's gay. He's gay as can be. Also having a journey of understanding who he is and understanding that it's okay to be who he is, because, you know, spoiler if you've never played Inquisition, the whole backstory is his father basically tries to conversion therapy him, and that's part of why he runs away and joins the Inquisition. So that just negates his whole backstory, because if Dorian was bi, he would have just done what many people have done throughout history, which is done what his family wanted and then had his boyfriend on the side. So it's not like this is somehow making the game better. You're just mad because you can't romance Dorian with your special snowflake lady Inquisitor. Same with Sarah. It's like, Sarah's a lesbian. That's on purpose. Leave that alone. So it's a weird line for me to straddle of, these characters were made, we finally get very explicitly gay characters, don't change them, but also these characters are not explicitly gay or bi or pan, and it'd be cool if I could date them as the gender they're not designed to date. Yes, Amanda.
I think there's a big difference between taking queerness away from a character versus adding queerness. And I think it's because it's something we've all touched on multiple times on this panel and probably on past panels and in our daily conversations, which is that queer representation is so limited that when you take away the queerness of a character, you're reinforcing, whether you mean to or not, all these different things about queerness and how, and like making it invisible and erasing it. Whereas like adding queerness, we all understand to an extent that like gender and sexuality is fluid, right? And maybe at the point for Alistair in the game, he was you know, a normal straight dude, but you know, in this mod, he's learned that like there's a different side of life that he wants to experiment with.
He's opening his mind and his butt. Anyway.
But yeah, right? Like, so I think when you add queerness to a character, you're also sort of promoting that idea to an extent that being queer, being trans, gender and everything is fluid. I remember a time when I said that I was just a bisexual male, right? Does that negate any experience I had in high school and middle school as a bisexual male? No, that's who I was at that time. That's not how I am now. And I think that there's a big difference in creating queerness versus removing it.
Yeah, I mean that's a good way to think about it, because I know that was a argument I saw a lot in various spaces, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna go with my mods and leave y'all alone. But in the interest of time, since we threw in something extra, just give me a name of a queer game or a game story that you might consider a guilty pleasure, and if it's not a guilty pleasure, that is totally fine too.
There is a visual novel. I went straight to this answer, right? There's a visual novel called Coming Out on Top. That's right. Sorry, it's really famous in the gay men's worlds because it's about this like college student who just came out in the last semester in college, and then it's like a romance sex porn game. It's very explicit. It's very explicit. So much so that in the sex panel, I was not allowed to show that video because like this is too explicit for PAX. Check it out. It's really fun. It's also really fun. It's very gay, and there's a lot of sex, and they're like diverse representation to some degree. Yeah, awesome. Coming Out on Top.
I don't have one really. I do have a story that's not mine that I'll share, which is that somebody used in Final Fantasy 14, so you can Fantasia a character, which means that you can completely change what your character looks like. Costs a little bit of money. And when they wanted to start exploring their transness, they changed their character to a girl. And since they do also role play while they play Final Fantasy, they just transitioned. And that's why I kind of like MMOs. I used to be super anti-MMO because I like the concept of paying for a game and then keep paying for a game. But then I remember that I LARP, and that's essentially the same thing. So, so then I got off my high horse.
You got off that saddle. You got off that saddle.
Real quick, let the horse ride away without me.
Chris, did you think of anything, or did Sharang really steal your answer?
Sorry.
He kind of legitly did, but I have more. Not wanting in that department, really. So
Guilty pleasures.
yeah, so I would definitely say that I want to give a shout out to The Sims, obviously, because I think they've been very important in this space. I also want to give a shout out to Sailor Moon because, like, from an academic standpoint, I really do think that that show was ahead of its time in how progressive it was, with Sailor Uranus and Neptune, and also the Sailor Starlights. And also, I'm out of scarcity, I am going to claim this as a queer game, Kingdom Hearts, because I think that Riku and Sora are totally gay. Like, the whole thing about Sora liking Kairi, who barely even has a personality, unfortunately, like, I don't buy it one bit. It feels very shoehorned in.
Awesome. And for me, you know, beside The Sims and Dragon Age and Mass Effect, I'm going to throw out a nod to Blue Rose because its queerness is built into Blue Rose RPG. Being straight is not the norm or the standard. Like, wait, I can be queer and that's the standard? Yes, give me more. And it's not guilty as in I don't ever feel guilty for playing it, but it's like this game does not apologize for how queer it is. I love that. And my Sims are always like, because I think with the pet expansion, you actually get a gay couple with like their stereotypical big dog. And and I'm like, okay, so, because I think they actually are listed as like husbands. So I thought that was really cute and cool. And my Sims are always like gay as gay can be, or poly, if I can find a poly mod that is stream friendly. Because yeah, the one poly mod I know of is not stream friendly. But I think that's a fun, neat thing to go out on. And, you know, thank you all for joining me. Thank you everyone who winds up watching this later. So we're going to go in reverse order so that I close this out. So Sharang, who are you? What do you do? And where can people find you on the internets?
So I am Sharang Biswas. I'm a game designer, writer, and artist. You can most easily find me on Twitter at Sharang Biswas. The spelling is right below us. Yeah, you can probably also check my itch page, which is Astrolingus. I think it's linked from my Twitter. And watch out for in September the Kickstarter of Strange Lust, Strange Loves, an anthology of erotic interactive fiction.
Awesome, Chris.
Yeah, you can find my Not Safe for Weebs pod everywhere where podcasts are found. We just completed season 1, which I'm very, very proud of. And I'm everywhere on social media, including YouTube, at One Winged Chris.
Amanda.
I'm Amanda. I'm on Twitter at Amanda T N Stevens, and then I'm Sage Gnosis everywhere else. That's SAGEGNOSIS. If you search that on YouTube, that's where you'll find my FGC podcast, The Neutral, which is also on Spotify. And when I'm not doing any of that, I'm just rambling on Twitter about being Black and trans in America and how great it is.
Awesome. And I've been your moderator, Tanya DePass, Cypher of Theater everywhere online, CYPHEROFTYR. So say hi, follow on what I'm doing with RPG stuff. And, you know, I always tweet there first when I'm doing new and fun things. So come in, hang out, and, you know, say hi. And that has been our panel.
Queer Quest by Battles and Terrific Transformations is a production of GaymerX, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to celebrating and supporting LGBTQ plus people and culture in the world of gaming, with a focus on video games. You can find us at GaymerX.org or GaymerX on Twitter. Post-production for this panel was provided by Christopher Lamb.